Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. Last April changed everything about how I see my own neighborhood. At 38, I'd been living in this quiet suburban part of Raleigh for about 6 years, with my daughter Emma, who had just turned 10. We moved there after my divorce, looking for a fresh start in a place where kids still rode bikes until the streetlights came on. The house wasn't fancy, just a simple 2-story colonial with a big backyard where my golden retriever Biscuit could run around. That Saturday afternoon was supposed to be like any other. Emma was upstairs working on her science project about volcanoes, and I was in the kitchen meal prepping for the week ahead. The windows were open, letting in that perfect spring breeze that smelled like freshly cut grass and blooming dogwood trees. I'm Tasha, by the way, and I'm sharing this because people need to know how calculated some predators can be. Biscuit had been acting restless all morning, pacing between the back door and his water bowl, whining in that particular way that usually meant he needed to go out. I'd let him into the backyard around 2 p.m. while I chopped vegetables for our weekly soup batch. He usually just sniffed around the fence line, maybe barked at the occasional squirrel, then came back to the door within 10 or 15 minutes. But that day, after about 20 minutes of silence, I realized I hadn't heard his usual scratching at the door. When I looked out the kitchen window, the backyard was empty. My first thought was annoyance, not panic, just frustration that he'd probably found another way to dig under the fence despite my attempts to block his favorite escape routes with bricks and chicken wire. I went outside calling his name, walking the perimeter of our fence until I found it. A loose panel on the north side that I'd been meaning to fix for weeks. The winter storms had warped the wood, creating just enough space for a determined 70-pound dog to squeeze through. The ground beneath showed fresh paw prints and disturbed mulch, where he'd pushed his way out. I cursed under my breath, wiped my hands on my apron, and went back inside to grab my phone and keys. Emma was still upstairs, completely absorbed in painting papier-mâché mountain slopes, so I just called up that I'd be right back, that Biscuit had gotten out again. She barely acknowledged me, which was typical when she was in her creative zone. Our neighborhood was safe and Biscuit was friendly but not prone to wandering far. Usually I'd find him 3 houses down, rolling in Mrs. Patterson's freshly fertilized garden beds. I started down the sidewalk, alternating between calling his name and whistling the specific tune that usually brought him running. The street was quiet for a Saturday afternoon, just the distant sound of someone mowing their lawn a few blocks over and the rhythmic sprinkler system from the Hendersons' yard. I walked past the familiar houses, the yellow ranch where the teenage Morrison twins always practiced guitar in the garage, the pristine white Victorian where Dr. Jen kept her prized rose garden, the corner lot with the little free library that Emma and I visited every Sunday. No sign of Biscuit anywhere. After about 10 minutes of searching, genuine worry started creeping in. He'd never wandered this far before, and despite being a big dog, he was gentle as a lamb and way too trusting of strangers. The thought of him getting hit by a car on the busier road just beyond our subdivision made my chest tight with anxiety. Just as I was pulling out my phone to text our neighborhood Facebook group, I heard footsteps behind me. A man was walking up the sidewalk from the direction of Maple Street, and cradled in his arms was Biscuit. Relief washed over me so fast I actually laughed out loud. The man was probably in his early 40s, wearing dark jeans and a faded blue work shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He had one of those faces that seemed designed to blend into a crowd. Medium build, sandy brown hair that needed a trim, stubble that looked about 3 days old. The only distinctive feature was a small scar that cut through his left eyebrow, creating a permanent gap in the hair. Biscuit seemed perfectly calm in his arms, tail wagging lazily, tongue lolling out in that dopey way golden retrievers perfected. "This your boy?" the man asked, shifting Biscuit's weight in his arms. His voice had a slight rasp to it, like someone who'd spent years smoking but had recently quit. "Found him sniffing around the storm drain down on Maple. Figured he belonged to someone in the neighborhood. He's too well fed to be a stray." He smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly yellowed but straight. I rushed forward, my hands reaching for Biscuit's collar, thanking the man profusely. Biscuit wiggled in recognition, his whole body wagging now, trying to lick my face as I checked him over for injuries. He seemed fine, just a bit dirty around his paws and belly. The man held him steady while I clipped the leash I'd grabbed onto his collar, his hands large and calloused, with dirt under the fingernails like he worked construction or landscaping. "I can't thank you enough," I said, still focused on Biscuit, running my hands through his fur to check for cuts or thorns. He got out through a loose fence board. "I've been meaning to fix it, but you know how it is. There's always something else that needs doing first." The man made a sympathetic noise, said he understood completely, that he had a German Shepherd himself who was an escape artist. He asked if I lived nearby, gesturing vaguely back toward my street. Without thinking, caught up in my relief and gratitude, I pointed toward my house, mentioned it was just 3 houses down from where we were standing, the one with the red mailbox and the oak tree in the front yard. He nodded, said he'd noticed that tree before, that it must be at least 50 years old judging by the trunk. We walked together for a moment, me chattering nervously about Biscuit's escape habits, him making appropriate responses until we reached my driveway. "Well, thanks again," I said, starting up the driveway, eager to get Biscuit inside and check on Emma. But the man followed a few steps onto my property, asking if I had any water he could have. Said he'd been walking around looking for the dog's owner for almost 20 minutes and was parched. The request seemed reasonable enough. It was a warm day and he had just done me a huge favor. I hesitated for just a second, that tiny alarm bell that women develop ringing faintly in the back of my mind. But Biscuit seemed comfortable with him. And what kind of person would I be to deny water to someone who'd just rescued my dog? I told him to wait right there, that I'd bring him a bottle. He smiled again, that same pleasant but forgettable smile, and said actually, would it be okay if he used the bathroom too? He lived clear across town and had been out running errands all day. The alarm bell got a little louder, but social politeness is a powerful force, especially in the South where hospitality is practically a religion. Against my better judgment, I opened the front door, planning to direct him to the powder room just off the entrance while I kept Biscuit with me in the kitchen. The second we crossed the threshold, everything changed. His hand shot out, slamming the door shut behind us, and the metallic click of the deadbolt turning sounded impossibly loud in the sudden silence. His other hand went to his pocket, and he told me in that same raspy voice, but now completely devoid of warmth, that he had a gun and would use it if I screamed. The transformation was so complete, so instant, that for a moment my brain simply refused to process what was happening. Biscuit, still oblivious, padded toward his water bowl in the kitchen, his nails clicking on the hardwood floor. The man grabbed my upper arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise, and steered me toward the living room. "Your daughter's upstairs, right? Emma? Working on her science project?" The words hit me like ice water. He knew her name. He knew where she was. He'd been watching us. My mind raced through the previous hour, trying to figure out how long he'd been planning this. Had he been casing our house, watching our routines? The answer came when he shoved me onto the couch and started talking, almost conversationally, while keeping his hand in his pocket where he claimed the gun was. "Smart dog you got there," he said. "Took almost 15 minutes to get him to follow me with just a handful of treats. Had to make a whole trail of them leading away from that loose fence board. Funny thing about dogs, they trust anybody with food." The sick realization of what he was saying made bile rise in my throat. He hadn't found Biscuit. He'd lured him away, knowing someone would come looking, knowing that person would be grateful and vulnerable when he returned the dog. "Most people got those Ring doorbells now," he continued, "but I noticed you don't. Just that old-fashioned peephole. That's good. Makes things easier." He wanted money, he said. Cash, jewelry, electronics, anything valuable he could carry. But first he needed to make sure Emma stayed quiet upstairs. He made me call up to her, forced me to tell her I was helping someone with directions and to stay in her room until I said it was okay to come down. My voice cracked on the words, but Emma, blessed with the self-absorption of a focused 10-year-old, just called back, "Okay, Mom," and went back to her project. The man smiled at that, satisfied, and started giving me instructions. Empty my purse. Get the emergency cash from wherever I kept it. Show him where the good jewelry was. The whole time he kept up a running commentary about how he'd done this before, how cooperating was the smart choice, how he just needed some quick money, and he'd be gone. His hand never left his pocket. I did what he asked, my movements robotic, handing over the $300 from my wallet, the envelope with $500 in cash I kept in the kitchen drawer for emergencies, my grandmother's pearl necklace from the bedroom dresser. 20 minutes. That's how long he was in my house. 20 minutes that felt like hours, with him following me from room to room, Biscuit trailing behind us, still wagging his tail occasionally like this was some kind of game. When he finally decided he had enough, he walked me back to the living room, told me to sit on the couch and count to 500 before moving. Said he'd be watching from outside, that he'd know if I moved too soon. Then he did something that still makes my skin crawl. He patted Biscuit on the head, told him he was a good boy, and walked out my front door like he'd just been visiting. I sat there, counting in a shaky whisper, tears streaming down my face until I hit 200 and couldn't stand it anymore. I ran to the door, locked it, grabbed my phone and called 911 while racing upstairs to Emma. She was fine, still working on her volcano, completely unaware of what had just happened downstairs. The police came, took statements, dusted for prints. They caught him 3 days later trying the same thing 2 towns over. Turns out he'd been doing this for months, using pets to get people to open their doors. He never had a gun, just his hand in his pocket. But I didn't know that then. All I knew was that my daughter was upstairs, and I would have given him anything to keep her safe. We moved 2 months later. I couldn't look at that front door without seeing him push his way in. Biscuit still loves everyone, still trusts too easily, but I don't. And I fixed every loose board in our new fence the day we moved in. The summer between junior and senior year was supposed to be my time to relax and maybe get ahead on some college prep. My parents had taken a 2-week cruise to Alaska, leaving me to watch the house in our quiet neighborhood in Riverside, California. At 17, I thought staying home alone would be the ultimate freedom, sleeping in late, playing video games without anyone nagging me, ordering pizza whenever I wanted. Our street was one of those typical suburban ones where nothing ever happened. Ranch-style homes with neat lawns, kids riding bikes, neighbors who waved when they walked their dogs. The most excitement we'd had in years was when Mrs. Chen's cat got stuck on the Williamsons' roof, and the fire department had to come get it down. That Tuesday started like any other day alone. I woke up around 11, made myself some cereal, and settled into the living room to binge-watch shows on Netflix. The AC was cranked up high because July in Riverside feels like living inside an oven. And I remember being grateful my parents had left me with a fully stocked fridge and no chores, except watering Mom's prized orchid collection. Around 2 in the afternoon, I was deep into my 3rd episode when I heard a knock at the door. Not the doorbell, an actual knock, which struck me as a little odd since we have a perfectly working doorbell with a camera attached. I paused my show and walked to the front door, checking the peephole first like my dad had always reminded me to do. A woman stood on our porch holding a small Amazon box, the familiar smile logo visible even through the distorted peephole view. She looked completely normal, maybe mid-30s, wearing jeans and a purple tank top, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun. She had this frustrated expression on her face, the kind people get when they're having a bad day and nothing's going right. She knocked again, a bit more impatiently this time, and shifted the box from one arm to the other. Through the door, I could hear her muttering something about GPS and wrong addresses. Everything about her seemed legitimate, just another delivery person having issues finding the right house. Our neighborhood did have a confusing numbering system. where the evens and odds switched sides halfway down the street. I opened the door but kept the chain lock on, creating just a few inches of space to talk through. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound more adult than I felt. The woman's face immediately brightened and she held up the box toward the gap. "Oh, thank God someone's home. I've been driving around for 20 minutes trying to find 4827 Maple Drive, but my GPS keeps sending me here. This is 4827, right?" She had this exasperated but friendly tone, like we were both in on how annoying technology could be. I glanced at our house number beside the door, 4872, and started to tell her she had transposed the numbers when something made me hesitate. Maybe it was the way her eyes kept darting past me into the house, or how her free hand was gripping the doorframe, but something in my gut told me to be careful. "No, this is 4872, I said, keeping my voice steady. 4827 would be..." I trailed off, pretending to think about it while actually watching her reaction. The change was subtle but unmistakable. Her shoulders tensed slightly, and that friendly smile tightened just a fraction. She leaned forward, pressing her face closer to the gap. "Are you sure? Because the name on the package says Thompson, and I could have sworn I heard that was this address." We weren't the Thompsons. We were the Garcias, and had been for the 12 years we'd lived here. The mailbox at the end of our driveway had our name in bold letters, clearly visible from the street. There was no way a real delivery person would make that mistake. My pulse quickened as I realized this woman wasn't here to deliver anything. Before I could react, she slammed her shoulder against the door with surprising force. The chain lock held for exactly 1 second before the screws ripped out of the doorframe with a splintering crack. The door flew open, hitting the wall behind it, and suddenly she was inside my house. But she wasn't alone. 2 men appeared from either side of the porch where they must have been pressed against the house, out of view from the peephole. They moved fast, too fast for me to process what was happening. One was tall and lanky with a shaved head and neck tattoos that looked like twisted vines. The other was shorter but built like a linebacker, wearing a Lakers jersey and basketball shorts. They pushed past the woman and into my living room like they owned the place. "Where's the safe?" the woman demanded, her whole demeanor transformed. Gone was the frustrated delivery person act. Her voice was sharp and commanding, her eyes scanning the room with practiced efficiency. The fake Amazon box hit the floor, revealing it was empty, just a prop. The tall one with the tattoos headed straight for the hallway leading to the bedrooms, while Lakers jersey started pulling open drawers in the entertainment center. "We know your parents keep cash in the house. Don't make this difficult, kid." My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. How did they know my parents were gone? How did they know about— Wait, my parents didn't even have a safe. Dad kept some emergency cash in his sock drawer, and Mom had jewelry in her closet, but we definitely didn't have a safe. "Listen," I started, raising my hands to show I weren't a threat. "There's no safe here, you've got the wrong house." The woman laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. It was harsh and disbelieving, like I'd just told the world's worst joke. She pulled out a phone and showed me a screenshot of what looked like a Facebook post. I couldn't read the details from where I stood, but I could see our house in the background of the photo. "Your daddy's been bragging online about his new gun safe, posted pictures and everything. Now where is it?" That's when it clicked. My dad had shared photos from a friend's house last month when they'd installed a massive gun safe, but the photos must have auto-tagged our home location. These people had done their homework, but they'd gotten it completely wrong. And now they were in my house, getting angrier by the second as they realized their intel was bad. The tall one emerged from the hallway empty-handed, frustration written across his face. "Nothing in the bedrooms except some cheap jewelry, and maybe $40 in change." He kicked over a potted plant as he walked back, sending dirt scattering across Mom's clean carpet. Lakers jersey had moved to the kitchen and was yanking open cabinets, tossing dishes onto the floor. The sound of breaking plates made me flinch. These weren't professional thieves. They were desperate, sloppy, and that made them dangerous. The woman grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin through my t-shirt. "You're lying to us, Marcus." The sound of my name from her mouth sent ice through my veins. How did she know my name? "We've been watching this place. We know when your parents left. We know you're here alone." My mind went into overdrive trying to figure out an escape plan. The front door was still open behind them, but Lakers' jersey stood between me and freedom. The back door was through the kitchen, but the tall one had positioned himself there. My phone was in my pocket, but there was no way I could call for help without them noticing. Then I remembered the bathroom. It was just down the hall, had a lock, and most importantly, had a small window that opened to the side yard. If I could get there and lock myself in, I could call 911 and maybe squeeze through the window. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than standing here waiting for them to get more violent. Okay, I said, trying to sound defeated. "The safe, it's in my parents' closet, behind the clothes. I'll show you." The woman released my arm but stayed close as we moved toward the hallway. The two men followed, their heavy footsteps making the floor creak. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. We passed the bathroom door, and I forced myself to keep walking to sell the lie. In my parents' room, I made a show of pushing aside hanging clothes in their walk-in closet, pretending to look for something. It should be right here," I mumbled, buying time. The three of them crowded into the closet doorway, trying to see what I was doing. This was my chance. I suddenly shoved backward with all my strength, using my shoulder to ram into Lakers' jersey's stomach. He stumbled back into the other two, and I sprinted for the bathroom. I'd never moved so fast in my life. My feet barely touched the ground as I flew down the hall, grabbed the bathroom doorknob, and threw myself inside. The lock clicked just as bodies slammed against the door from the other side. The cheap hollow core door shook in its frame, and I knew it wouldn't hold for long. My fingers fumbled with my phone as I dialed 911, wedging my back against the door to give it extra support. 911, what's your emergency?" The operator's calm voice seemed surreal given the chaos. "3 people broke into my house. They're trying to break down the door. I'm at 4872 Maple Drive in Riverside." "Please hurry!" The banging intensified, and I heard the woman's voice, deadly calm now. "Open the door, Marcus. You're just making this worse for yourself." A crack appeared in the door near the handle. They were kicking it now, and each impact sent splinters of wood flying. The operator kept me on the line, her steady voice the only thing keeping me from complete panic. "Officers are on the way, Marcus. They're 3 minutes out. Can you get to safety?" 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. The bathroom window was small, maybe 18 inches square, and painted shut from years of Dad saying he'd get around to fixing it. I grabbed Mom's heavy ceramic soap dispenser and smashed it against the window latch, breaking the paint seal. The window groaned as I forced it open, old wood protesting against the movement. Behind me, a huge crack split the door from top to bottom. One more kick and they'd be through. Could hear sirens in the distance. Beautiful, beautiful sirens, but they still sounded too far away. The woman's voice changed, becoming urgent. "Cops are coming, we need to go. Now!" The footsteps retreated fast, thundering through the house. I heard the front door slam, then car doors, then tires squealing on asphalt. But I stayed put, pressed against that broken door with the phone clutched in my hand, not trusting that they were really gone. The sirens grew louder, closer, until red and blue lights flashed through the small window. Only when I heard Riverside Police, "Is anyone in the house?" did I finally open what was left of the bathroom door. 4 officers had their weapons drawn, clearing each room professionally. One of them, a young officer with kind eyes, found me in the hallway. My legs were shaking so badly I had to lean against the wall. "You're safe now," she said, holstering her weapon. "You did exactly the right thing calling us and finding a secure location." The aftermath was surreal. Police photographers documented everything: the broken chain lock, the scattered dirt from the plant, the smashed dishes, the destroyed bathroom door. Detectives asked me to describe the 3 intruders in detail, and I was surprised by how much I remembered. Every tattoo on the tall one's neck, the specific Lakers jersey number, 24, Kobe's number, the woman's chipped purple nail polish. Neighbors came out to watch, and Mrs. Chen brought me a blanket and hot chocolate, even though it was 90 degrees outside. She sat with me on the porch while I called my parents, trying to keep my voice steady as I explained what had happened. My dad wanted to fly home immediately, but the detective assured him I was safe and they'd have a patrol car watching the house. 2 days later, Detective Rodriguez called with an update. They'd found the getaway car abandoned in a grocery store parking lot 3 miles away. Inside was the fake Amazon box and a printout of my dad's Facebook post, the one from his friend's house that had started this whole nightmare. Security footage from the store showed them switching to another vehicle, but the license plate was visible. Within a week, all 3 were arrested trying the same scam in another city. The woman turned out to be wanted for similar home invasions across Southern California. She'd made a career out of studying social media for targets, looking for mentions of safes, expensive purchases, or vacation plans. They'd picked our house because of a tagged location mistake and assumed a 17-year-old would be an easy target. What they hadn't counted on was that sometimes a bathroom door and a 3-minute response time make all the difference. My parents got better locks. I deleted all my social media and we never posted another photo with location tags again. Sometimes the best lessons are the ones that scare you the most. My name is Rachel, and I'm 30 years old. Last March, I was living alone in this small rental house on Maple Street, one of those neighborhoods where everyone has bird feeders, and the biggest drama is usually someone's cat digging up flower beds. I worked as a graphic designer from home, which meant my schedule was pretty flexible, and I often found myself running errands at odd hours. That Tuesday night, around 11 p.m., I realized I was out of coffee for the morning, and there was no way I was starting Wednesday without caffeine. The closest place open was a Shell station about 15 minutes away, one of those bright fluorescent islands on the edge of town where truckers stop and teenagers hang out in the parking lot. The drive there was uneventful. Just me and my podcast about unsolved mysteries filling the silence. The gas station was mostly empty when I pulled in, just the clerk inside and an older guy pumping diesel into his pickup. I parked near the door, went in, grabbed my coffee and some snacks, made small talk with the clerk about the weather. Normal stuff. But when I walked back to my car, I noticed a silver sedan parked at the far pump, engine running. No one pumping gas. 2 figures sat inside, and even though the windows were tinted, I could tell they were watching me. The car had one of those aftermarket spoilers and custom rims that rattled slightly in the wind. I got in my Honda and pulled out, telling myself I was being paranoid. The sedan didn't move at first, which made me relax a little. But as I turned onto the main road, I saw those distinctive LED headlights swing out behind me. They kept their distance, maybe 3 or 4 car lengths back, matching my speed exactly. When I switched lanes, they switched lanes. When I slowed down at a yellow light, they slowed down too. My neighborhood was a maze of suburban streets with lots of turns, and I took a deliberately complicated route home, making unnecessary rights and lefts. The silver sedan stayed with me through every single turn, never getting closer, never falling back, just maintaining that steady, deliberate distance that made my skin crawl. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my heart was hammering against my ribs. The sedan drove past without slowing down, and I caught a glimpse of the license plate, one of those temporary dealer tags that was conveniently too faded to read clearly. I sat in my car for a full minute, watching my mirrors, before finally grabbing my groceries and hurrying inside. I locked the deadbolt, put on the chain, and peeked through the blinds at the street. Everything looked normal. The neighbor's porch light was on, casting familiar shadows across their lawn. A cat darted between the bushes. I told myself I was overreacting, that it was just someone who happened to live in the same direction. I put the coffee away, brushed my teeth, changed into my pajamas, and tried to settle in with some Netflix in my bedroom. About 30 minutes later, I was halfway through an episode when I heard it. A soft scraping sound coming from the back of the house. At first I thought it was just the wind moving the trash cans or maybe a raccoon getting into something. But then I heard it again, more deliberate this time, like metal against wood. I muted the TV and listened. The sound came again, and this time I recognized it. Someone was working at my back window, the one in the spare bedroom I used as an office. The window that had a broken lock I'd been meaning to fix for weeks. My whole body went rigid as I heard the frame creak, the sound of someone testing it, pushing up slowly, carefully, like they knew exactly which window to try. I slipped out of bed, keeping the lights off, and crept down the hallway on bare feet. Through the crack under the office door, I could see shadows moving outside the window, backlit by the streetlight in the alley. There were 2 of them. I could hear muffled voices now, low and urgent. One of them had something in his hand that caught the light. A crowbar maybe, or a Slim Jim. They were working methodically, professionally, like they'd done this before. My phone was still in the bedroom. I had to make a choice, go back for it and risk making noise or find somewhere to hide first. The window frame gave another groan, and I heard one of them say something about almost there. That decided it for me. I ducked into the bathroom, the only room in the house without windows, and locked the door as quietly as I could. My phone, thank God I'd grabbed it after all, showed 11:47 p.m. I dialed 911, whispering to the dispatcher that someone was breaking into my house right now. Please send someone immediately. She kept me on the line, asking questions I could barely answer because I was straining to hear what was happening outside the bathroom door. The window finally gave way with a wooden crack that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet house. I heard feet hit the floor, heard them moving through my office, opening drawers. They weren't even trying to be quiet anymore. One of them said something about checking the bedroom, and I heard footsteps coming down the hall, getting closer to where I was hiding behind a locked bathroom door that suddenly seemed as flimsy as paper. The doorknob rattled. I pressed myself against the far wall, still clutching the phone, the dispatcher's voice tiny and distant in my ear. The person outside tried the knob again, harder this time, and I heard him call to his partner. "Hey, bathroom's locked. She might be in here." The other voice responded from somewhere near my bedroom. "Check the closets first. We need to find her before—" He cut himself off, but I knew what he meant. Before I could call for help, before I could identify them, before I could escape. They thought I was just scared, hiding somewhere obvious. They didn't know I'd already called 911, that help was supposedly on the way. But where were the police? It had been maybe 3 minutes since I'd called, but it felt like hours. The doorknob rattled again, and this time I heard the distinct click of someone trying to pick the lock. Then, like a miracle, I heard sirens. Distant at first, but growing louder. The picking stopped immediately. "Cops!" one of them hissed, and I heard them scrambling, running back toward the office. Through the thin bathroom walls, I could hear them climbing back out the window, cursing as they went. Something fell and shattered, probably the lamp on my desk. The sirens were screaming now, right outside, and I saw red and blue lights flashing through the gap under the door. Car doors slammed. I heard shouting, authoritative voices commanding someone to stop, to get on the ground. There was more cursing, the sound of feet pounding on pavement, more shouting. The dispatcher was asking if I was okay, if I was safe, telling me to stay where I was until an officer came to get me. I don't know how long I stayed in that bathroom. Eventually, there was a knock on the door and a woman's voice identifying herself as Officer Martinez. I unlocked the door with trembling fingers and saw a uniformed officer with kind eyes and her hand resting on her weapon. She led me outside where 3 patrol cars had my little street lit up like a movie set. In the back of one car sat 2 men in ski masks, hands cuffed behind their backs. One of them turned to look at me through the window, and even with the mask on, I recognized the build, the posture. These were the same men from the gas station. Officer Martinez explained they'd caught them trying to run through my neighbor's backyard. The silver sedan was parked 2 blocks over, engine still warm. The next few hours were a blur of questions and photographs and evidence bags. The detectives told me something that made my knees weak. They found rope and zip ties in the sedan, along with a roll of duct tape and a knife. They found more than that too. In the glove compartment was a notebook with addresses, descriptions of women, their daily routines. Mine was the newest entry. Shell Station, 11 p.m., lives alone, small Honda, takes Maple Street. But there were others. Pages of others. Some entries were crossed out with dates next to them. The detective showing me this had a grim expression when he told me I was lucky, that my quick thinking probably saved my life. The men weren't just burglars. They were something much worse, and they'd been watching me for who knows how long before that night. It turns out they'd been marking houses with something almost invisible, a tiny piece of reflective tape on the mailbox, practically impossible to notice unless you were looking for it. They'd marked mine that night after following me home. The detective showed me similar cases from neighboring counties, women who'd reported being followed from gas stations, grocery stores, ATMs. Most had brushed it off as paranoia. Some hadn't been as fortunate as me. The two men, brothers named Derek and Marcus Walsh, had been doing this for months, maybe longer. They would pick their targets at random locations, follow them home, mark the house, then come back when they thought the victim would be most vulnerable. They specifically looked for women alone at night, women who seemed distracted or tired, women who might not notice they were being followed until it was too late. I moved out of that house the following week, stayed with my parents until I found a new place across town. The Walsh brothers are both serving life sentences now. Turns out I wasn't their first attempt, just their last. I still get coffee, but never at night and never alone. I installed security cameras at my new place, got a German shepherd named Bailey who barks at everything, and I always trust my gut now. When something feels wrong, it probably is. The detective called me a few months after the trial to tell me they'd connected the brothers to 3 missing women from the previous year. He thanked me again for calling 911 so quickly, said my testimony helped put them away for good. I don't feel like a hero, though. I just feel grateful to be alive. Grateful that I noticed that silver sedan in my rearview mirror. Grateful that I didn't talk myself out of being afraid. Sometimes paranoia isn't paranoia at all. Sometimes it's your instincts trying to save your life. I live in a shared house in North Carolina, not far from Durham. The setup is simple: 3 bedrooms, shared kitchen, a narrow living room with sagging furniture we never replaced. At the time this happened, I was 32 and working night shifts doing maintenance at a hospital nearby. My hours were irregular, which meant I was usually the one popping in and out while the others were either working remotely or out with friends. It wasn't a fancy place, but we kept it functional. Just 3 adults trying to make rent a little easier. The roommates were Emily, who worked in IT, and Jordan, who rotated between bartending gigs and weekend DJ sets. Emily had just gotten out of a long-distance relationship a couple months earlier, so when she told us she'd started talking to someone online, it didn't feel unusual. She mentioned his name was Matt, and that he lived an hour away. The first time she brought him over, I remember thinking he looked calculated. Not necessarily creepy, just very aware of himself. Trim beard, soft-spoken, always in gray or black. He was polite to a fault, but his eyes moved like he was cataloging things. By the end of the second week, Matt was staying the night more often. He never said much, and honestly, I tried to keep to myself. I'd pass him in the kitchen, maybe exchange a quick nod or two, but there was always this tension in his posture, like he was coiled too tight. I chalked it up to nerves. Maybe he wasn't used to shared housing. Jordan joked once that Matt moved in faster than Amazon Prime, but Emily just laughed it off, said he was helping her feel safe after the breakup. We didn't push. That Thursday started like any other. I picked up an extra shift covering for someone at the hospital. Around 9 p.m., I got a text from Jordan saying he was going to a show downtown and that the house would be quiet. I wasn't supposed to get off until 4 a.m., but around 12:30 they let me go early because of low patient volume. I remember being oddly excited to get home before 2 a.m. and actually get some sleep. I parked out front, Noticed that Emily's car was still in the driveway, and the lights inside were off except for the one over the stove. I assumed they were asleep. As soon as I stepped through the front door, something felt mismatched. Not in a dramatic horror movie way, more like a subtle wrongness, like walking into a room where someone just stopped talking about you. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach, which was weird because none of us cleaned past midnight. I walked past the living room and into the kitchen to grab a drink, and that's when I saw him. Matt was standing by the counter, holding a kitchen knife in one hand and a small, clear bag of zip ties in the other. He wasn't startled by me walking in. He didn't even flinch, just turned his head slightly like he'd been waiting for this moment. I froze mid-step and asked, "Where's Emily?" My voice sounded sharper than I intended. He didn't answer, just stared at me like he was weighing something. My eyes flicked toward the hallway behind him, where her room was, and I swear I heard a dull thump, like something struggling against wood. I took a slow step backward, raising both hands just slightly. "I'm not gonna do anything, man." "Let's just talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't move. His grip on the knife was steady, low near his thigh, almost casual. But that calmness, that's what got under my skin. It wasn't panic. It was patience. Then something shifted. He stepped toward me without warning, and I turned hard and ran for the front door. He was fast. I felt him grab the back of my hoodie as I hit the entryway, yanked so hard I stumbled sideways into the wall. The knife clattered to the floor, maybe knocked loose in the struggle, and I took the chance to twist around and shove him off. We slammed against the door, and I remember this awful moment where we were both just grabbing at each other, blindly, like animals in a cage. I managed to knee him in the side and sprinted out barefoot into the yard, yelling at the top of my lungs. I didn't even think to check on Emily first. I ran straight to the neighbor's house and pounded on their door until the porch light flicked on. It felt like forever, but Mr. Hendricks, a retired vet who lived next door, opened up, took one look at me, and called the cops while I stood there catching my breath, half expecting Matt to come sprinting out behind me. The police showed up in under 5 minutes. By then, Jordan had just gotten back too and was confused as hell seeing patrol cars swarming the street. I pointed them inside, trying to explain everything in short bursts. 2 officers went in with weapons drawn. When they came back out, they were walking Matt out and cuffed. Emily was still in her room when they found her. She was tied to the bed frame with some of her own scarves, duct tape over her mouth, wrists zip-tied to the posts. She'd been crying so hard her voice came out hoarse when they cut her loose. She kept saying, "I didn't think he'd actually do anything," over and over. According to the officer I spoke with, Matt hadn't just locked her in. He'd taken her phone, unplugged the Wi-Fi router, and even moved a dresser in front of her door after restraining her. The only reason she hadn't screamed louder was because he'd threatened her the moment Jordan and I had left earlier that evening. Later that night, the detectives told us this wasn't the first time. Turns out Matt had a sealed record in another city, and after some digging, they found a case in Asheville almost identical to what happened here, right down to the zip ties and kitchen knife. That woman had fought him off during the night and escaped through a window. He'd vanished before police could track him. He used a different name then. What really hit me was how easily he slipped into our lives, how natural it seemed at first. Just a quiet guy visiting his new girlfriend. No red flags loud enough for any of us to do something. Emily ended up moving out 2 weeks later. She said she couldn't sleep in that room anymore, and honestly, I didn't blame her. Jordan and I tried to make things feel normal again, but the house didn't feel the same. I started locking my bedroom door at night, which I'd never done before. Even now, I catch myself checking the front door 3 or 4 times before bed. It's like the safety bubble we'd all taken for granted just popped, and now everything feels exposed, like we let something in that we didn't recognize until it was too late. The last I heard, Matt pled guilty and took a deal to avoid a full trial. He's in prison now, apparently in some mental health unit. Sometimes I think about how close that night came to ending differently. If I hadn't come home early, if I'd waited until my usual shift ended, I don't know. Emily says she still has dreams about him standing in the hallway. For me, it's the kitchen, the way he looked at me like I was an inconvenience. Not surprised, not angry, just like I ruined something he had planned. So this is probably going to sound crazy, but I need to get this off my chest because it still haunts me 15 years later. My name is Maya, and when I was 13, my mom got called for this last-minute job interview at some fancy restaurant downtown. She'd been unemployed for 3 months after the factory closed, and we were barely scraping by on unemployment checks. The interview was scheduled for 8 p.m. because the manager could only meet after the dinner rush. Mom was nervous as hell, changing outfits like 5 times and practicing her answers in the mirror. She kept apologizing for leaving me alone, but honestly, I was kind of excited. At 13, being home alone felt like this huge milestone of independence. Our neighborhood was quiet, mostly older folks and young families, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's business, but still minded their own. The house we rented was this old 2-story colonial with creaky wooden floors and doors that never quite closed properly. Mom had been meaning to fix the backsliding door for months because the lock was finicky. You had to jiggle it just right or it wouldn't catch. She showed me one more time how to work it before she left, making me promise to double-check all the locks after she was gone. The kitchen window faced our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson's house, and I could see her blue TV light flickering through her curtains. Mom kissed my forehead, told me she'd be back by 11 at the latest, and reminded me for the 100th time not to open the door for anyone, not even if they claimed to know her. The sound of her old Honda Civic coughing to life in the driveway made me feel both excited and oddly nervous, though I couldn't pinpoint why. I spent the first hour doing what any unsupervised 13-year-old would do, raiding the kitchen for snacks Mom usually rationed and flipping through channels we didn't normally watch. Around 9:30, I was sprawled on the living room couch eating leftover pizza and watching some cheesy horror movie when I noticed movement outside the front window. There was this guy, maybe in his 30s, wearing dark jeans and a gray hoodie, just walking slowly up and down the driveway of the house across the street. The Hendersons lived there, but they were out of town visiting their daughter in California. Mom had mentioned collecting their mail while they were gone. What struck me as weird wasn't just that he was there, but how deliberate his pacing was. He'd walk from the street to their front porch, pause for like 30 seconds, then walk back to the sidewalk and repeat the whole thing. He kept glancing toward our house, and even though I was watching from behind the curtain, I swear he was looking right at our windows. At first, I figured maybe he was a friend of the Hendersons who didn't know they were out of town. But after watching him for 20 minutes, the pattern became unsettling. He never approached their door or tried to knock. He never pulled out a phone to call them. He just kept pacing, always with those casual glances toward our house. The way he moved was too casual, too practiced, like he was trying to look normal while actually surveying the area. When a car drove down our street, he'd stop pacing and pretend to check his phone until it passed, then resume his weird ritual. The pizza in my stomach started feeling heavy, and I found myself checking the front door lock 3 times in a row. Something about his presence made the familiar sounds of our house, the refrigerator humming, the heater clicking on, seem amplified and somehow threatening. Around 10:15, the guy finally stopped pacing and walked away, disappearing around the corner toward the main road. Relief washed over me, and I actually laughed at myself for getting so worked up over some random dude who was probably just lost or waiting for someone. I turned the TV volume back up and tried to focus on the movie, but my concentration was shot. Every few minutes, I'd peek through the curtains to make sure he hadn't come back. The street looked normal again, just empty sidewalks under the yellow streetlights and Mrs. Patterson's TV still glowing blue through her windows. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, that Mom's constant warnings about stranger danger had just gotten to my head. But there was this nagging voice in the back of my mind that kept replaying how deliberately he'd been watching our house, like he was timing something or waiting for a specific moment. By 10:45, I was getting antsy for Mom to come home. The house felt bigger and emptier than usual. with too many dark corners and too many windows that anyone could peer through. I went around closing all the curtains I'd left open, double-checking every lock on the first floor. The back sliding door was always the trickiest. You had to lift the handle while turning it, then jiggle it to make sure the latch actually caught. I tested it twice, pulling on the door frame to make sure it wouldn't budge. Satisfied that everything was secure, I grabbed a bag of chips and headed upstairs to wait for Mom in my bedroom, where I could see the driveway through my window and spot her headlights the moment she pulled in. The wooden stairs creaked under my feet in their familiar pattern. The third step from the bottom always groaned the loudest. Then the seventh step near the top had this sharp squeak that Mom kept saying she'd fix. I was lying on my bed, half watching some late-night talk show and half listening for the sound of Mom's car, when I heard it. A soft metallic clicking sound from downstairs, like someone was manipulating the back door handle. At first I convinced myself it was just the house settling, or maybe the heater making noise. But then I heard it again, that distinctive sound of the sliding door mechanism being worked. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I muted the TV and held my breath, straining to listen. For maybe 30 seconds there was complete silence, and I started to think I'd imagined it. Then I heard the unmistakable whisper of the sliding door opening, that soft scraping sound it made against the track, followed by the gentle thud of it being closed again. Someone was inside my house. The same person who'd been watching from across the street now knew exactly which door was the easiest way in, and somehow, he'd figured out how to work that finicky lock. The terror that hit me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. This wasn't the jump-scare fear you get from horror movies. This was primal, gut-deep panic that made my entire body feel electric with adrenaline. I could hear footsteps on the kitchen linoleum, slow and deliberate, like whoever was down there was trying to be quiet, but didn't realize how sound carried in our old house. They were moving through the first floor methodically, and I could track their progress by the creaking floorboards. Living room, dining room, the bottom of the stairs. My mind raced through every possible option. The house phone was downstairs in the kitchen. My mom wouldn't be back for at least 20 minutes, and Mrs. Patterson was probably asleep with her TV on. The footsteps paused at the bottom of the staircase, and in that moment of silence I made the only decision that made sense. I slipped off my bed as quietly as possible and crawled into my closet, pulling the door almost completely shut behind me. Crammed between my hanging clothes and a pile of shoes, I tried to control my breathing and listen to what was happening. The footsteps started up the stairs, hitting every creak I knew by heart. Third step, groan. Seventh step, squeak. Whoever this was, they weren't familiar with our house's quirks because they stepped heavily on every noisy board that Mom and I had learned to avoid. Through the tiny crack I'd left in the closet door, I could see a sliver of my bedroom illuminated by the hallway light that I'd left on. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and paused again. I pressed my face against the closet wall, trying to make myself as small as possible while fighting the urge to hyperventilate. The silence stretched on forever, and I started to wonder if maybe they'd gone back downstairs. Then I heard my bedroom door creak open wider. I'd left it partially closed, and now someone was pushing it all the way open. A shadow passed across the slice of light visible through my closet door. Whoever was in my room was moving slowly, deliberately, like they were searching for something. I heard my desk chair scrape against the floor, then the sound of drawers being opened and closed. They were going through my stuff, rifling through my belongings with the casual confidence of someone who believed they had all the time in the world. The absurdity of it hit me. This person was burglarizing my 13-year-old desk drawer, probably finding nothing more valuable than homework assignments and friendship bracelets. But then I heard something that made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. They were opening the other bedroom doors, one by one. Mom's room. Door opening, footsteps inside, then back out to the hallway. The bathroom. Same pattern. The spare room we used for storage. Door opening. Brief pause, then closing. They were being systematic, checking every room, and I realized with growing horror that they weren't just looking for valuables. They were looking for people. My closet door was next. I knew it with absolute certainty, the same way you know the sun will rise tomorrow. The footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom, and I could hear breathing. Not heavy or labored, just the normal breathing of someone who was taking their time and wasn't worried about being interrupted. The breathing got closer, and through the crack in my closet door, I saw a shadow fall across the carpet. A hand appeared in my narrow field of vision, reaching for the closet door handle. Time seemed to slow down to nothing. I pressed myself as far back as I could go, trying to disappear into the wall behind me, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. The hand gripped the handle and started to turn it, and just as the door began to open, I heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Mom's Honda Civic coughing to life in the driveway, followed by the slam of the car door and her keys jingling as she walked toward the front door. The hand on my closet door handle jerked away like it had been burned. I heard rapid footsteps moving away from my room, then the sound of someone practically running down the stairs. The third step groaned, the seventh step squeaked, but this time the footsteps were quick and panicked instead of methodical and confident. I heard the back sliding door open and close again, much more hastily than before, followed by the sound of footsteps on the back patio, and then silence. Mom's key turned in the front door lock, and I heard her call out, "Maya, I'm home, honey," in that cheerful voice she used when she was trying to hide how exhausted she was. I wanted to run to her immediately, to throw myself into her arms and tell her everything, but my legs wouldn't work. I just sat there in my closet shaking and crying with relief, listening to her footsteps as she moved through the house calling my name. When she finally found me huddled in the closet, she took one look at my face and knew something terrible had happened. I told her everything. The man across the street, the sounds downstairs, the methodical search of our house, how close I'd come to being discovered. She called the police immediately, and they found pry marks on our back door frame where someone had forced the lock. The officer explained that burglars often watch houses to establish patterns, waiting for the perfect moment when they know everyone is gone. But this guy had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed that because Mom left alone, the house was empty. He never counted on a scared 13-year-old hiding in a closet, and Mom's early return had probably saved my life. So, I'm sharing this because I still get anxiety attacks when I see anyone in medical scrubs at my front door. My name's Camilla, and I'm 33 years old. At the time this happened, I was recovering from gallbladder surgery. Nothing too serious, but enough to keep me moving like an old woman for about 2 weeks. I work as a marketing coordinator for a small tech company, and honestly, I was kind of enjoying the forced downtime at first. My apartment is on the second floor of this converted Victorian house in Portland, and I'd been camped out on my couch with Netflix and way too many delivery apps on speed dial. The surgery was outpatient, so I was home the same day, just dealing with some soreness and these annoying drainage tubes that made me walk all hunched over. My mom had flown in from Phoenix to help for the first few days, but she'd already gone back home by the time this whole nightmare went down. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September, around 2:30 p.m., and I remember because I was watching some cooking show and getting frustrated that I couldn't even stand long enough to make myself a decent meal. The weather had just started turning crisp, and I had the windows cracked open because the apartment gets stuffy when it's closed up all day. I was wearing these ridiculous oversized pajama pants and an old college sweatshirt, feeling pretty sorry for myself and scrolling through my phone when I heard the knock. It wasn't the usual quick rap that delivery drivers do. This was more deliberate, like knock, pause, knock. Professional sounding, if that makes sense. I wasn't expecting anyone, and my neighbor Mrs. Chen usually just calls out my name when she stops by to check on me. The knocking continued, patient but persistent, and I realized whoever it was wasn't going away. Getting up from the couch was still a whole production at that point. I had to roll to my side first, then push myself up slowly so I wouldn't pull anything. Each movement sent this dull ache through my abdomen, and I was moving like I was made of glass. I shuffled to the door in my slippers, and when I looked through the peephole, I saw a woman standing there in mint green scrubs. She looked to be in her 40s, average height, with shoulder-length brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was holding a small black bag and had this official-looking clipboard tucked under her arm. My first thought was that maybe my surgeon's office had arranged for some kind of follow-up visit that I'd forgotten about. The post-surgery brain fog was real, and I'd been pretty scattered about appointments and instructions. She looked legitimate enough, professional, and she wasn't acting impatient or sketchy like I'd expect from someone with bad intentions. When I opened the door, I kept the chain lock engaged and just cracked it enough to talk to her. "Hi there," she said with this warm, practiced smile. "I'm Sarah from Valley Home Health Services. Dr. Martinez's office sent me to do a routine checkup on your surgical site and take your vitals. How are you feeling today?" The thing is, she knew my surgeon's name, which threw me off completely. Dr. Martinez had mentioned something about possible home visits during recovery, but I thought he meant if there were complications. I was still standing there trying to process whether this was normal when she continued. "I know you weren't expecting me, but we like to do surprise wellness checks to make sure our patients are healing properly at home. It'll just take a few minutes and then you can get back to resting." She seemed to know exactly what to say to make it sound routine and official, and honestly, I was still pretty medicated and not thinking as clearly as I should have been. But something nagged at me. Maybe it was the way she kept glancing past me into the apartment, or how she shifted her weight from foot to foot like she was anxious to get inside. I asked her if she had any ID or paperwork from the doctor's office, and her smile flickered for just a second before she reached into her pocket. "Of course, honey. Let me just..." She fumbled around and pulled out what looked like a hospital badge, but she held it at an angle where I couldn't really read it clearly. "Listen, I've got 4 more patients to see today, and I'm already running behind. Can we just get this done quickly? Your incision sites need to be checked, and I need to document your recovery progress for Dr. Martinez." The way she said it made me feel like I was being difficult, like I was holding up important medical care. I was second-guessing myself, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid because I'd been cooped up alone for days. The pain medication definitely wasn't helping my decision-making, and I felt foggy and uncertain about everything. Against my better judgment, I unlatched the chain and stepped back to let her in. She immediately pushed the door wider than I'd opened it and stepped inside with this purposeful stride that didn't match her earlier friendly demeanor. "Great. Let's get you settled on the couch so I can take a look," she said, but her eyes were already scanning my living room, taking inventory of everything. My laptop on the coffee table, my purse hanging on the chair, the bottles of prescription pain medication lined up on the kitchen counter. The way she was looking around set off every alarm bell in my head, but she was already moving toward my medication setup like she belonged there. "Wow, they really loaded you up with the good stuff," she said, picking up one of the bottles and examining the label. "Oxycodone, tramadol. You must have been in serious pain. How many of these have you taken today?" Her tone had shifted completely. Less nurturing nurse, more like someone appraising valuable items. That's when I knew for certain that something was very wrong. Real nurses don't start by going through your medication without permission, and they definitely don't comment on your prescriptions like they're pricing them. I started to say that maybe she should come back another time when I could call the doctor's office to confirm the appointment, but she cut me off. "Actually, Camilla, let's just skip the pleasantries." Her voice had gone completely cold, and when I looked at her face, all pretense of professional caring was gone. She reached into that black bag she'd been carrying and pulled out a kitchen knife. Nothing fancy, just a regular 6-inch blade that looked like it came from someone's cutlery drawer. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit down on that couch, keep your mouth shut, and let me take what I came for. You make any noise, try to call anyone, or give me any trouble, and I'll make sure your recovery takes a lot longer than expected." The casual way she threatened me was almost worse than seeing the knife, like this was just another routine part of her day. My mind went completely blank for a moment. I mean, You watch crime shows and think you know how you'd react in a situation like this, but when it's actually happening, your brain just stops working. I was still processing the fact that this woman had somehow gotten my doctor's name and address, had shown up in legitimate-looking scrubs, and was now holding a knife in my living room. The absurdity of it almost made it feel unreal, like I was watching it happen to someone else. But the sharp pain in my abdomen when I tensed up reminded me that this was very real, and I was in no condition to fight or run. She gestured toward the couch with the knife, and I backed toward it slowly, my legs feeling like they might give out. "Good girl. See how easy this can be?" she said, already moving toward my kitchen counter where all my medications were lined up. "I'm going to take these and anything else that looks valuable, and then I'll be on my way. You just sit there and stay quiet." What terrified me most was how organized she seemed, like she'd done this before. She pulled out a small duffel bag from her larger bag and started methodically going through my apartment. First, she swept all the prescription bottles into the bag. Not just the pain meds, but also my antibiotics, anti-nausea medication, everything. Then she grabbed my laptop from the coffee table, unplugged my phone charger, and started going through my purse. She found my wallet and took the cash, but she also took my credit cards and wrote down the numbers in a little notebook she had. "Don't even think about canceling these for at least 2 hours, she said without looking up. "I've got friends who can move fast, and if you make trouble for me, I'll make sure they know where you live." The way she talked about friends made my skin crawl. It sounded like she was part of some kind of network, not just a random criminal who'd stumbled onto an opportunity. While she worked, she kept talking, almost like she was trying to justify what she was doing. "You know how easy it is to find out about people like you. Hospital records aren't as secure as they pretend. A few phone calls, a little social engineering, and boom. I know when you had surgery, what medications you're on, even what your insurance covers." She was rifling through my jewelry box now, taking anything that looked like it might be worth something. "You people with your fancy insurance and your prescription painkillers, you have no idea how much this stuff is worth on the street. 1 bottle of Oxy can pay my rent for a month." The resentment in her voice was palpable, like she genuinely believed she was entitled to what she was taking. It was clear this wasn't just about money. There was something deeper going on, some kind of anger at people she saw as privileged or better off than her. The whole time she was ransacking my place, I was trying to figure out if there was any way to get help without her noticing. My phone was on the coffee table, but she'd already spotted it and moved it out of my reach. I kept thinking about Mrs. Chen next door. She was retired and usually home during the day, but her TV was always loud, so she probably wouldn't hear anything unless I really screamed. And this woman had made it clear that making noise would only make things worse for me. I was stuck there, hurting and helpless, watching this stranger destroy my sense of safety in my own home. The worst part was how methodical she was about it. She wasn't frantic or rushed like you'd expect from someone committing a crime. She was taking her time, being thorough, like she had all day to strip my apartment bare. It was obvious she'd done this before, probably multiple times. After about 20 minutes of her going through my stuff, I heard something that made my heart jump. Footsteps on the stairs outside my apartment. Heavy footsteps, like work boots, and they were coming up to the 2nd floor. The woman heard them too, and for the first time since she'd pulled out that knife, she looked nervous. "Expecting someone?" she asked, and there was an edge to her voice that hadn't been there before. I shook my head, but I was praying it might be my landlord, Mr. Rodriguez, who sometimes came by to check on maintenance issues. The footsteps stopped right outside my door, and then came a loud, authoritative knock. "Police! Open up!" The relief that flooded through me was so intense, I almost started crying. Apparently, Mrs. Chen had been paying more attention than I thought. She'd seen the woman in scrubs go into my apartment and had gotten suspicious when she didn't come back out after a reasonable amount of time. The fake nurse's whole demeanor changed instantly. She grabbed her bag and headed for my kitchen, where there's a back door that leads to the fire escape. "This isn't over," she hissed at me, but I could tell she was panicking now. "You say anything about what I look like and I'll find you again." She was trying to sound threatening, but her voice was shaking and she was moving fast, stuffing the last of my things into her bag. The police were pounding on the door now, shouting for me to open up, and I called out that I was okay, but there was an intruder in the apartment. I heard the woman's footsteps clattering down the fire escape, and then everything went quiet except for my heart hammering in my chest. When I finally opened the door for the officers, I was shaking so hard they had to help me sit down. They caught her 2 blocks away, still carrying my stuff, and it turns out she'd been hitting recovery patients all over the city using the same exact method. The detective who interviewed me later said I was lucky. Some of her other victims had been hurt much worse when they tried to resist. It had been one of those dragged-out Thursdays where everything feels off rhythm. I'd spent most of the evening at my buddy Troy's place just outside town. We were messing around with his new sound setup and ended up watching 2 full horror movies without realizing how late it got. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex, it was past 1 a.m. I remember noticing how still everything was. The usual hum of traffic from the nearby highway had died down, and the air was sharp with that faint scent of someone having smoked outside not too long ago. My complex isn't fancy, just a bunch of 2-story beige buildings stacked close together, each with 6 units. I lived alone on the upper floor, apartment 204, sandwiched right in the middle. Lights were out in every direction. I always double-check the door when I get in. It's a habit I picked up after one of my neighbors got their car broken into last winter. I locked the deadbolt, threw my keys in the bowl by the sink, grabbed a soda, and dropped onto the couch. I didn't even bother turning on the big light. Just the kitchen light behind me was enough. I had barely opened my laptop when the doorbell rang. It wasn't frantic or drawn out, just a single buzz. Short. I sat there for a second, waiting, listening. Maybe it was someone hitting the wrong unit. Happens all the time, especially with delivery people who don't bother checking the numbers. But then, about 3 minutes later, it rang again. Same short buzz. This time I stood up. I didn't say anything. Didn't move toward the door just yet. I kept the overhead light off so no one could see movement through the cracks. From where I stood in the kitchen, I had a straight line of sight to the front door. I waited. That's when I heard the knock. Not loud. More like someone using just the tips of their fingers. 4 taps. Then nothing. No footsteps, no talking, no shuffling. I moved slowly to the door, quiet as I could. I peeked through the peephole. There was a man standing directly in front of my door, facing straight ahead. He had on a dark beanie, scruffy facial hair, and one of those puffy zip-up jackets that make people look bulkier than they are. His left hand held a clipboard. Not a phone, not a package. An actual clipboard, like the kind you'd see with surveys or meter readers. But it was nearly 1:20 in the morning. No logo on his jacket, no ID badge. He wasn't looking around. He wasn't fidgeting, just standing there like he was waiting for me to do something. I stayed frozen behind the door, watching. After a long minute, he turned and walked out of view. I didn't sleep well that night. I turned off everything and lay in bed with my hoodie still on, just staring at the ceiling. Every little sound, the fridge kicking on, the pipe settling, kept snapping me back into alertness. I kept replaying the image of that guy standing there. What bothered me wasn't just that he showed up late, it was how patient he was. Most people ring, wait, and leave. He didn't seem in a rush, didn't try to knock loud or call out. It was like he already knew how long he was willing to stand there. Around 3 a.m., I finally passed out with my phone on my chest, half expecting to wake up to another knock. When morning came, the whole vibe around the building had shifted. I opened my door to head down for a coffee run and saw 2 cruisers parked near the leasing office. A couple of officers were talking to residents outside Building C, and one of them was writing stuff down on a little pad. I stayed back for a second, trying to gauge whether I should get involved or just go about my day. But then my downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Elkins, an older woman who always wore bright purple Crocs, called up to me asking if I had seen anything weird the night before. That's when one of the officers looked up and started walking toward me. He asked if I was home the previous night, what time I'd gotten back, and if I'd heard or seen anything strange. I told him about the guy with the clipboard, what he looked like, what time he showed up. The officer's expression changed slightly, still polite but more focused. He flipped to a different page in his notepad and asked if I was sure about the clipboard. I said, yeah, totally sure. He nodded and said they'd been taking reports all morning. Apparently, someone had been ringing doorbells and knocking softly on units across multiple buildings, probably testing to see who was awake. Around 2 a.m., 3 units got broken into, one of them just 2 doors down from mine. What made it worse was what the officers were piecing together. The guy didn't seem to force entry. He was just trying doors, buzzing first, knocking if no one answered, and then gently turning the knob. If it was locked, he moved on. If it wasn't, he went in. No smashed glass, no busted locks, just walked in. One woman said she thought it was her boyfriend coming back from a night shift and didn't check the peephole. He stood in her hallway and left when she started screaming. Another guy said he heard someone open his door, peek in, and leave when he coughed loudly from the bedroom. Everyone kept using the same words: quiet, calm, like he'd done it before. It didn't sound like someone desperate. It sounded practiced. After the cops left, I sat on the edge of my couch for a long time just thinking about how close that guy came to getting inside. I kept picturing my door handle turning slowly, and the guy just letting himself in while I was in the kitchen. Lights low, completely unaware. I thought about how I didn't even have anything in front of the door. No chair, no lock bar, nothing. Just a thin piece of wood and a deadbolt. That morning I drove straight to the hardware store and bought one of those sliding door braces and a little wedge alarm that screams if the door opens. I also switched my peephole for one of those wide-angle ones. Cheap stuff, but it gave me something to do with the nervous energy. I didn't go out much that week. Every little sound in the hallway made me pause. I'd keep checking the peephole even when no one had knocked, just to be sure. A couple of the neighbors started a group chat for our building, which helped us all stay in the loop. Someone mentioned they thought the guy had been in the complex earlier that day, maybe even watching who came and went. I couldn't stop thinking about that. How many times had I walked past him without even noticing? Had he watched me pull in, seen my light turn on, and decided to try anyway? That kind of thing messes with your sense of safety in a way that's hard to explain. A few nights later, I was watching TV with the volume low when I heard someone ring a bell in the building again. This time it wasn't mine, but I muted everything instantly. I stood up and went straight to the peephole. No one was outside my door, but I stayed there for a while just watching. Eventually, I heard footsteps going down the stairs, slow and measured. I didn't sleep that night either. The cops never came back, and as far as I know, they never found the guy. Maybe he moved on. Maybe he lived nearby. No one ever saw his face clearly enough to help with a sketch. And no cameras caught him. Our complex is too cheap for that. That doorbell sound still gets to me. Not during the day, but at night, if I'm alone, and I hear that short buzz, I swear I stop breathing for a second. I keep everything locked now, double-checked, braced and backed up with alarms. But it's not really about the locks. It's the fact that I was right there, inside, awake, and he still tried. And the thing that keeps me up sometimes isn't that he was testing doors. It's that mine was one of them.